You're listening to Hooked on Startups, where every week you'll hear from some of the most talented, inspiring, and successful entrepreneurs who share their real-life stories, how they overcame challenges and failures, and how they mastered success. Get ready for some of the best business tips, tricks and tactics, and some frank, unscripted discussions. Here's your host, Matthew Sullivan.
Well, I'm delighted today to have Ryan Crownholm with me. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Ryan, you have a very long and successful track record as an entrepreneur. And what's really interesting, though, is that you've managed to move into established and highly competitive industries. And you've transformed them with technology and branding and marketing. So basically, you've taken on the big boys and beat them at their own game. Does that sound like a good summary? Or
it's very flattering. I dug into very specialized niches
yes.
of the bigger game and decided to dominate the small parts of business rather than going after the big ones. And so my businesses have always been high profit margin, but getting into the multi-million-dollar range, but not the 10, 20, $30 million range that the other guys are chasing after.
Yes.
It's a real sweet spot for me. It has been.
And so tell us about, so the first one was hauling pros. So the story is, you started out as a college kid and you got a pickup and then it grew and grew. So how did you get the idea? Because I guess everyone's saying, Ryan, you've got to be crazy. Why would you want to compete with all these guys that have been doing it for years? How do you think you can compete? So how did you maintain that sort of drive to do it?
Yeah. So I'm an ex-military guy. I like to work hard. I was in college. At the time I was bartending, which I'm a guy that goes to bed at 9:00 at night. So bartending doesn't work well with me. And then I went out and worked with another guy who was doing something very similar and saw that this was an industry that was largely dominated by single guy with a pickup truck. There was the bigger guys hadn't infiltrated the marketplace yet. This is back in 99, 2000. And so I was the first one to go out and to buy trucks that were all uniform, put my guys in uniforms. It was really kind of the way it grew was interesting. Was I bought the first truck, went out, did some work, got really busy, and then have a friend that would lose a job and be like, "Hey, Ryan, I'm looking for work." I'd be like, "Okay." So I'd buy another truck and be like, "Hey, work on this one." And then, a few months later, another friend would say, "Hey, I'm looking for some work." "Okay, I'll go buy another truck." And by the time I graduated, I had 10 trucks and about 20 guys working for me, driving out, hauling. All the trucks were all custom dump trucks, very well branded. And that was that. So I graduated from college. We were already doing about $1 million a year in sales. And so I decided it probably wasn't appropriate for me to go out and get a real job.
That's it. So you became unemployable the moment you left college, basically.
I made a conscious decision after getting out of the military that I would be unemployable for the rest of my life. I figured out in the Army that I was not a very good employee.
Yes. But so you say you bought another truck, but that must have been quite challenging just to raise the finance. So those are the things that I'd like to explore. So how do you go about convincing someone to lend you money, whether it's a bank or a family friend?
Yeah. So, it's funny. I talk a lot with tech startups nowadays when they go out and they create pitch decks and they go and they ask lots of different people for money, where it's really sort of non-recourse capital for the most part. I took on the most recursive capital you can take. It was a student loan. Wow. I was on a full scholarship at college, and so my expenses were covered, but I was offered a $20,000 student loan, obviously non-forgivable. And to me, I went, $20,000, that's a dump truck. And so I took out the student loan and I bought my first truck, and every truck thereafter I paid cash.
But that's a huge leap forward. So that really is, burning your bridges, basically, isn't it? I mean, that's going for it, because once that money's committed, as you say, it's completely recourse.
It's total recourse. If things don't work out, that money is non-forgivable. And that is kind of the way that I've run all of my businesses. I don't invest money in something unless I know that I'm going to recover it. And it's the same thing when I've never taken a single dollar of capital as investment money from anyone, because I'm not willing to do that until I know that I'm going to give them at least a 1.5, 2 times return on their money. And so
But there must be a point though where the butterflies in the stomach, the sleepless nights. How did you know that this was going to be the business for you?
Well, I actually didn't know that it was going to be a business for me. It was a business that was making money for me. I only probably a year before I started my business, I was living in my car. So all of a sudden to go out and be able to make, let's say $600 or maybe $1,000 a day, using my body, which is what I love anyhow.
Yes.
I'm a guy. I like to work a 16-hour day of manual labor. Even today, so to me, it was gravy. It was a no-brainer. Maybe as I got older, that changed a little bit, but.
Sure, and that's the thing. So this is the pathway. So the really interesting thing for me is the desire that you feel that you can't quantify. It's almost like a calling where this is something. And I'm sure that many, many entrepreneurs have that feeling, but many don't act on it. So what sort of advice would you give them? How can they recognize that feeling? And it's that step from 0 to 1, which is the hardest.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, your customers will let you know really quickly whether you're onto something. You have, for me, it's funny. That was the first entry point, and it was funny. People used to tell me I didn't know you could actually do a hauling business. I thought everyone just took the stuff to the dumps themselves. That was the mentality back in 99, 2000. And now nobody goes to the dumps anymore. And so to me, it was just sort of this is a service that saves people a lot of time and money. And
exactly, and that's another critical thing that I want to talk about. And you mentioned this on your website. You talk about showing people your people you consult to effectively how to place their business in the middle of a growing marketplace for maximum profit. And we mentioned earlier the tech entrepreneurs, the pitch decks, the slight dislocation from reality. Why didn't you go out and buy 10 dump trucks? Because that's what it's almost like. If I have a pitch deck, I'd buy 100 dump trucks. So what is the value of starting small and learning rather than going big? For me, I feel like I would be very answerable to someone else if I took on the capital and decided to ramp up and order 20 brand new dump trucks and hire a bunch of new layers of management. Losing control. Maybe call me a control freak. I do things in my business where I do my ramp. Right now, I'm actually in a ramp phase in one of my businesses, so I'm putting in 60 or 70 hours a week gladly, and I'll do so probably for the next 6 months to a year. But once I get things sailing, sometimes I like to just relax for 3 months or 6 months. And investors, employees, managers don't like to see that. So I like to call the shots. And that's right. And I think that's critical because as an entrepreneur, it doesn't sit well to feel that you've actually sold out your idea. And people don't seem to understand the complications that arise if you sell your business to someone who's expecting you to work for them. But so how many people do you come across who have this great idea and you can see in their eyes that what they're trying to do is boil the ocean effectively? And your advice could be, look, just get one customer. I mean, how valuable is that as an approach, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I always, with startups, I'd say for entrepreneurs is if you're going to do a business, you have to be obsessive to a level of madness about whatever they're doing. And if you're not, then you're not going to succeed. And so I can see in startups when guys have that fire, where they're putting in 16, 18 hours a day, grueling, I'm meeting with a guy later today. He's living in a van while he's growing his startup, and he's doing over $1 million a year in sales already. And so, go figure. It's that sort of drive what makes people successful. And so, the opposite side of it is entrepreneurs that come to me and they say, I want to start a business, but I'm not really sure what I want to do. I just I want to make money. It's like, if it's in your head that you're starting a business to make money, there's a good chance that you're going to fail.
Yes.
I start my businesses saying, I want to go out and provide value to the marketplace and see if the marketplace reacts.
And that's right. Because again, a lot of the questions that I get are, I want to be an entrepreneur. It's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. could you suggest a business? And you see it on Facebook, and what's a great business for me to start with? So that seems a crazy way to sort of to start.
You need to look internally, look inside of you, and see what you're really passionate about, and see if you can turn that into a business.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of businesses that, and one approach is to go into a completely new field. But I think I'd like to explore a bit more about some great businesses. DumpMyTVcom, IHateMyPool.com, I think. But these are areas where you've identified a real problem.
And that's what all of my businesses have been the same way since Hauling Pros started. DumpMyTV.com was back in 2007, 2010, somewhere around there. There was all these regulations built around the electronic waste industry and the hazmat, and the landfill started charging a lot of money to dispose of these things. I would pass the fees on to the customers. It was really hurting my bottom line.
Yes.
So I thought, well, I got to do something about this. And so I went and got a state certification to fix my problem. And so then we started palletizing all these electronics. And then we had connections with different places around the Bay Area where we could sell off the components. So then I had people disassembling computers, shrink wrapping TVs. And this was only internally. And at some point, we had such an operation going that was so convenient for us. Yeah, we figured we should just open this up to the public. So we got a 5,000 square foot warehouse in Pacheco, California, and we opened it up, went out on the street, waved some signs, and before you know, we had 1 million pounds of electronics we were recycling. We opened another center in Walnut Creek. We started doing nonprofit fundraising events. We had trucks everywhere, and so that business really grew up. It was actually my first foray into doing any work that had to do with government redemption, though. And
yes. But again, there's another thing there. So, and it's critical, I think, if you're starting up a business, to find something where there is a problem and you are providing a solution.
Yes.
And so, rather than, I think there's this example of someone that wanted to set up a grass cutting service. So you can either go out and buy a lawnmower and cut the grass, or you could build an app that alerts you when your grass gets to a certain height, using satellite technology. And so you can complicate the hell out of something, because I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to put a different spin on it. But it sounds to me like that's not the answer.
It's not. I like guys. So it's funny you bring up lawn. During the drought, with all the foreclosures and everything, there was this one guy. He was so genius. He came up with a chemical-free paint to paint lawns green. On the market, it could go out there, spray paint them green to make the house look better. It's little niches like that people laugh at.
Yes.
When you have a 70, 80% margin or making a killing, you can laugh all day long. He's going to take the money to the bank.
And again, I almost, I gave you if I had a hat, I would have taken it off when I read about what you were doing with pools as well. Because, the thing with pools is one way. People want a pool. No one, who else thought of a business to get rid of your pool?
So the interesting, let me break down how it ended up on swimming pools. So I was a general engineering contractor. So we were specializing we did demolition, underground construction, trucking, excavating, lots of bigger work. The economy in 2007, when it really took a dive, a lot of that work we were doing disappeared. So I hired an AdWords guy to go on and create campaigns. I said, here are my skill sets. Here are 100 things that I can do with all of my equipment and all of my people. We created campaigns around each and every one of those. And one of those was swimming pools. And it wasn't necessarily a focus, but we were getting so many hits on that piece that I said, you know what, let's focus on that. Let's do pools. And so I changed my website. I printed brochures. I bought the website, IHateMySwimmingPool.com. And I said, I'm the specialist. And I had an engineer that was working for me, a soils engineer. I made sure my process was the best in the marketplace. And then I went after that and said, I'm only taking out pools. And it turned out that it was a very good, I think the first year we did like 18 pools, next year 35, the next year we did 100, the next year we did 180. We were doing well over 200 swimming pools. We were taking out 5 swimming pools a week, basically. I had crews working all over, and this was very high margin business. This was 70% margins on these pools. So all the other contractors were at home complaining about how bad the market was. I had my best years ever. I was going to the auction and buying equipment pennies on the dollar from all the bankruptcies.
And this all came out of this approach, which I think is a brilliant approach to say, let the market dictate what I should be doing. So rather than the if you build it, they will come approach, it's using technology. And that's a common thread with your businesses. I think it's taking established businesses that are set in their ways, that have no technology, no marketing, run by the old boy network almost, and and sort of turning it on its head. And that's a remarkable skill. I mean, is that something that you've developed? Is there a program that you could build out of that?
Program? No, I think it's all about, for me, is experimentation and always solving my own problems. And so it's interesting. The pool business led into something that I'm doing now.
Yes.
Shall I get into that?
No, definitely. Which I was going to ask you, which is the sort of the dirt exchange, which again is brilliant.
That's one. There was two businesses that sprouted out of the pool removal. There was two problems that we had. One was disposition and acquisition of dirt. And so I had a person in my office that was in charge of dispatching dirt and finding dirt sources and filling pools. And so that was a really busy job. And so since then I created a software to replace what that person was doing. And we have Dirtmatch.com. Dirtmatch.com, it's been launched about 3 months ago in Los Angeles. We have about 1,000 users. Thousands of friends are getting it back and forth. So it was a fix to a problem that I had. So I created a solution for myself, even though I'm not in the industry anymore. I knew what the guys needed and I launched it and I was right. And so that's exciting. So we're going to be doing nationwide.
But that ties into environmental concerns. It turns into, because basically the model is that, I guess if you're filling in a swimming pool, as an example, you need to find, God knows how many tons of earth of dirt, and there are people that could be a mile away that are excavating dirt and have to pay to get rid of it. So it is that wonderful sort of matchmaking of supply and demand.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. It was just addressing a problem in the marketplace, and so we did it, and it's working. And the other one was when we first started taking the pools out, we had to do a property site plan. Every time we for a permit. And so at first I would go home and I would draw these site plans. They would take me an hour or two to put them together, and then eventually I thought, maybe I could get someone else to do this. All the information I'm using is online. And so I hired a guy in the Philippines. He's doing the site plans for me. It saved me a ton of time. And then at some point, we were doing so many of these, 5, 10 a week. And I thought, I wonder if somebody else could use this service. And I launched mysiteplan.com. And so now we do 400 site plans a month for contractors and homeowners nationwide. Based off of fixing a problem that I had that I've now solved. And so that's for entrepreneurs. There's nothing better you can do than always just look for ways to sort of make your life easier. And when you find them and it makes your life easier, there's a really good chance it's going to make someone else's life easier as well.
And there's this whole concept of doing something that you're passionate about. When people say, I want to do a business that I'm passionate about, do you agree with that? Do you think you should do you think you should do something you love, or do you think you should love what you do? There's a sort of
sure. So it's interesting because I don't know if I'm necessarily passionate about the
about dirt. Yes.
What I'm passionate about is customer service.
Yes.
I won't settle for anything less than 100% customer satisfaction. And I do full money back guarantees if you're not happy with what I do. That's how I've grown every single one of my businesses. And so I just sleep better at night. I like getting 5-star reviews all day long. It's like a little bit of dopamine every time I get another 5-star review. So that's the business that I am in. I'm in the customer service business.
But I see also, but your site, you can see that you're now sort of moving into that sort of mentoring phase, and you're enabling people to really leverage your knowledge and experience. And how have you found that? So it's almost this shift from being the guy that does the 16 hours a day, that rolls his sleeves up, to maybe taking a step back and getting involved in a more passive way. What are the tensions that you feel there? Is that something that you're going to build, or is that something that you're going to contain?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I really, really enjoy. It's been almost 20 years now I've been working as an entrepreneur, and I've learned all the hard lessons. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone to help me along the way. It was a bunch of guesswork. So it was a lot of wasted time and wasted money figuring it out. And so to be able to sit down with somebody who's where I was 15 years ago and give them all the shortcuts of how to to get things done, to me is, very rewarding to me.
And do you find, is it sort of frustrating in some ways, or do you find that entrepreneurs today, are they a particular breed, or do you see yourself in them over and over again?
Well, it depends. So I don't like to put everybody together into a basket. I do get, I've been to several of the tech conferences, and it seems to me there's a lot of way too much focus on fundraising. You should be spending 99% of your time growing your business and maybe 1% out fundraising. If your business is good enough, then you'll find money to grow the business. But if you're having to spend half or 60% of your time out, exclusively pitching investors, your business isn't good enough.
Sorry. Yes. So one of the again, critical things that I've noticed is this sort of dislocation between the real world. And I was talking to one of my other guests a few weeks back about this concept of a minimum viable proposition, where people are thinking, I've got to have 100 customers, when in fact, just get one paying customer, prove the model, start small.
Yeah.
Don't try and boil the ocean. Is that a common problem with people who are obsessed with Silicon Valley and millions and billions?
I'll take it a step further than find your first customer. I'd say find your first paying customer, your first dollar.
Yes.
Yeah. Go out and then, once you start to make money, and start to grow a business, then you might realize as you go along that maybe you don't want investor dollars. Investor dollars they come with an awful lot of baggage.
They do.
So I don't understand this emphasis of, people going to these incubators, and one of the first things they teach them is how to create a pitch deck. They need to teach them how to grow a business. And I just feel like that's what my background. Like I said, I've never raised any capital from anyone. My whole business career is still very apprehensive, and I have, for my most recent ventures, I've had a couple of people approach about investing, and I'm self-funded. I don't want anyone else's money, but I also just don't want to be answerable to anyone.
And I think that is one of the big messages, really, that if you're not shackled by investors, and if you don't have to dance to their tune, then you're much freer. And I think people feel that they need to have investors because it's almost like a crutch. It's almost a halfway house between being employed and being that solo pilot, which is the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I think it's having faith in your abilities, and you've obviously demonstrated that you can build multi-million-dollar businesses. You can take on established industries.
Yeah, it's also it's the same temptation a lot of people fall for bringing on a business partner too early without really fully understanding their business. Probably 90% of business partnerships fail. Just not doing it because it's nice to hold someone's hand in the beginning because it's really scary and there's a lot of risk and it's nice to bounce things off of each other, but man, they're really, really expensive in the long run. And so I've been very, very resistant to ever take on a partner in any of my businesses.
And how did you deal with, how did you find dealing with cities and government officials and regulations? And did you have to bring on additional people, or is that just something that you learned yourself?
Sure. I mean, for my last business, I was very, we were between OSHA regulations and, building inspection and, EDD and insurances. And, we had, heavy equipment truck drivers. So we had, drug testing. We had just layers upon layers to layers of government intervention in the things we were doing, which is probably one of the reasons why I was just so kind of over that business. And it's so funny now I can have a business that's growing incredibly rapidly, but completely off of my cell phone.
And that's it. And do you find that this concept of moving from being an entrepreneur into a manager, is that the point where you go, I just don't want this anymore?
Yeah, I mean, there's a point, like, and I'm there right now with my business where with the site plan business. I'm a manager. I'm managing. I have a fairly large dispersed staff that I'm managing, and I do need to bring someone on to do that. But before I do that, I work feverishly to find technology to replace the things that I'm doing on a daily basis. And when there's no more technology to take over the things that I'm doing, then I bring someone on and create systems around that person to make sure that the business can continue to grow without me. I'm not there yet, and I think that it'll be a few more months. But getting there too early and getting anxious and bringing people on if we have systems created for them is a really, really bad idea.
But I can see. But I can see the focus. I can see your, almost. You can see in your mind the steps. What's the opportunity? How do I business? How do I take advantage? How do I dominate the sector? How do I remain efficient? How do I not sort of splurge out on capex? How do I grow it? And that's I think those are lessons that entrepreneurs need to understand. It's you don't have to go straight to funding or partnerships or just get stuck in, I think, is the answer.
Yeah, I agree. Just get out there and do it. I feel like a lot of people spend an awful long time especially in technology, building the perfect product for launch. With Dirtmatch, I spent a long time building it, and it was far from perfect when I launched it. But I just said, let's put it out there. People will complain. There'll be issues. That's fine. We'll fix them. But I don't want it to be perfect. It'll never be perfect. And so it's going to be something that over the years we'll fix. We'll make it better and better. And so I launched it probably 2 months early, but it's fine now. It's stable.
And again, I think that is just a brilliant piece of advice. Just never let perfect get in the way of good. Just launch it. So what are you most excited about right now? I'm really excited about the site plan business, just because we're transitioning right now from the site plans is sort of the lowest common denominator of the skill sets that all of my designers have. I have guys that are PhDs in architecture, university professors that are working for me now, and so doing a two-dimensional site plan is for them is. And so as I look across all their skill sets for different people, I'm thinking that now I'm working on building it's essentially an online drafting firm. It's a freelancer marketplace for drafters, for engineers, surveyors, architects. So that's the next pivot. It's been really exciting for me growing up. But that's a global industry. That's not a niche business. That's potentially got global demand, I would have thought.
I am a global business now. We're in 3 countries. So I'm the United States, Canada, and Australia. And just because I speak English. So
I was going to say that's most of the sort of civilized world basically you've got there. So,
but my eyes are always on the horizon. If there's people that are demanding the services that I provide, then I'm going to provide it for them. So sky's the limit. Let's go. Right now we're growing at a rate that is exciting.
Fantastic. And so for a young entrepreneur or for someone that's just about to take the first leap, what do you think is the best piece of advice that you ever received?
Oh man, it's a hard question. I didn't receive a lot of advice at all. I've been unfortunately probably in all of my businesses up until this point, I was always the smartest guy in the room. And
listen, I've been there. Don't worry. And how far we fall. Yes.
For the first time now, I've been surrounding myself with a lot more people who I really look up to, who provide a lot of great insight and advice. And I wish I would have had some of those people when I was younger. But for advice that I got was, it was probably my landlord coming saying, "You better pay your rent."
Yes,
it was always sink or swim for me. It was just about paying the bills, and that's how I grew my businesses.
But that's, I think, again, you're underplaying the huge amount of guts and courage it takes to rely on yourself to pay the bills, because it's so easy just to go back and to let someone else take the responsibility and pay you the check every month. But I mean, it really does take real drive and courage to have the faith and confidence in yourself. And that's, I guess that's the sort of the true entrepreneur. But you're right. The value of mentoring, I think it can't be understated. And are there any, as a technology-driven individual, are there any systems or processes or books that you would recommend? You must read this, you must do that.
A couple of them. I mean, I'm quite a marketer. A lot of my businesses have grown through marketing, and I think it dates back to being like 17 years old and reading J. Conrad Livingston's, guerrilla marketing books.
Fantastic, yes.
It taught me really early on to always look outside of the box. And if you look at all my businesses throughout time, my marketing was never in line with my competitors. It was always some very far off sort of twist to it that gave me a competitive advantage. So that was a really good one. I love Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Workweek.
Fantastic, yes.
4 hours a week, but because he gives great insight into making your life more efficient. I tell people sometimes that I'm actually a pretty lazy entrepreneur. I'm always looking for ways to lighten my workload, and so I can kind of hang out with my family. And so,
there's the balance, yes.
Right. There's busyness is a sign of laziness. You got to go out and find people to do the work for you sometimes. And
that's brilliant. And how can people get hold of you? Because there's so much information and knowledge and experience you have. How do people find you? How do they get to know you? How do they contact you? How do they connect with you?
Sure. Well, I try to be out in the community a lot, so you'll see me out at events quite frequently. But you can visit RyanCrownholm.com, and there's some contact information. rcrownholm@gmail. You can email me. So
that's brilliant.
Any startups, anyone who has the passion and desire to grow, those are the people that I really, really want to meet and talk to. It just gets me fired up.
Well, guys, you know who you are, so contact Ryan. And that's Ryan. Thank you so much. You've been fantastic. It's been great having you on.
Yeah, really appreciate you having me, Matthew.
That's wonderful. Well, you've been listening to Hooked on Startups. I'm Matthew Sullivan. Thanks for listening. See you next week.